A lot of people said that this is going to be harder for victims of DV and IPV to come forward, and this is sending a wrong message to the public. Again, this case is not Johnny Depp against IPV and DV victims at all. It's between two individuals. Each individual is different, and each case is different. Hey there, Zesties! Welcome back to the Gleeful Talkshow, where we share zesty stories to cultivate the happiness and hero within. Before we start this episode, I'd like to invite you to please like, follow, or subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow the show on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That's at Gleeful Talkshow. Feel free to email me at gleefultalkshow@gmail.com for any episode suggestions or slide me a DM on my socials. If you'd like to give me a cup of coffee or two, head down to the episode notes to find out how. So, if you haven't listened to the previous episode yet, I encourage you to go and have a listen. Although this isn't a continuation per se of the previous episode, listening to the previous one will help things make sense for you. Another set of zesty stories for you today, and I hope you'll enjoy. Many of you may have already known that the verdict was already made in the Depp versus Heard trial, and that is, drumroll please, Johnny Depp won all 3 counts of his defamation suit against Amber Heard. The first count was the online headline of the op-ed in the Washington Post. Quote, "I spoke against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change," unquote. Heard's lawyers argued she didn't write the headline. However, when Amber Heard took the stand, at one point she said it's about Depp and others. Prior to that, she denied that it was about him. So what's the deal? Anyway, the inconsistencies were apparent to the jurors. Hence, they concluded that Heard made or published it and it was defamatory by implication. The second count was the op-ed's third paragraph. Quote, "Then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out," unquote. Depp's side argued that this clearly referenced Depp, given that Heard publicly accused him of domestic violence in 2016. The op-ed was written in 2018. Heard's lawyers argued that there was a mountain of evidence that showed Heard was abusive numerous times and that just one instance of proven abuse would make the line not defamatory, and Depp was not the focus on this statement, but of Heard's experience of speaking out. Again, the jurors disagreed and found this defamatory. The third count was the second paragraph saying, quote, "I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse," unquote. As with the other counts, the jurors found Heard had defamed Depp with actual malice, meaning there was clear and convincing evidence that Heard either knew it was false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. A lot of headlines were saying that Depp won $15 million. However, this is not entirely true. The jury awarded $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages, meaning this $5 million is like the dollar equivalent of the punishment that Heard has done, and the $10 million is the dollar equivalent of Depp's loss of job. However, in the state of Virginia, the punitive damages are capped at $350K. Hence, Depp won in total of $10,350,000. The settlement of this amount is an entirely different conversation. It will depend on the parties on how this will be settled and another set of engagement with the lawyers. What if Amber Heard couldn't pay the amount? Can she file for bankruptcy? Based on my research, nope. But she might be able to use bankruptcy proceeding to slow down the payments, but this is a risky path. According to the Bankruptcy Law Section 523A, Clause 6, it says that A discharge of debts under various other sections of the law does not discharge an individual debtor for any debt for willful and malicious injury by the debtor to another entity or the property of another entity. In other words, bankruptcy law protects individuals from debts they incur, but also protects some people who have valid claims against debtors. According to Professor Markwell of Northwestern Pritzker School of Law in Illinois, most tort judgments based on negligence, such as car accidents, slips, and falls, are dischargeable in bankruptcy. But what separates Heard's case from regular tort cases is the finding of intent. Bankruptcy law does not permit most intentional torts, such as assault, to be discharged. Now, a lot of people were saying that this verdict is sending the wrong message to the public, including Amber Heard's attorneys, that is going to be very hard for DV survivors to come forward. I beg to differ. I have watched the trial without looking at TikTok content because I don't have TikTok and I'm not that active in social media anymore. But I've watched the trial itself, including a legit legal commentary from a former LA district attorney. And I have to say that the inconsistencies of Heard's evidence and testimonies were two of the main reasons why this trial was won by Depp. Heard didn't come across as credible at all on the stand, including her witnesses. So I urge those who haven't watched the whole 6-week trial to watch it firsthand before commenting on that this is a setback for women, etc. More than anything, I think that this trial has shed light and sparked conversations around mental health and any type of abuse, which I will be discussing in future episodes. Now, don't forget that Heard filed a countersuit against Depp, for which she won 1 out of 3 counts, wherein she was awarded $2 million in compensatory damages and no punitive damages. Her countersuit was against Adam Waldman's statement, Depp's attorney in 2020, accused of Heard and her friends of fabricating abuse allegations following a 2016 fight in the couple's Hollywood penthouse that prompted her to call the police. The statement reads, quote, "Quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempt didn't do the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property. So Amber and her friends spilled a little wine and roughed the place up, got their story straight, under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911, unquote. The officers that were called that night testified in the trial that they saw no signs that Amber Heard was injured, though she appeared in public with a mark on her face a few days later, seeking a temporary restraining order or TRO, in which Depp wasn't even in the US when that restraining order was filed. In this case, the jurors think that the statement was false and defamatory and acted with actual malice. Now, Amber Heard's attorney, Elaine Bredehoft, have come out in various morning shows for an interview saying that there were mountains of evidence that, quote-unquote, proved Depp was the abuser, and it still wasn't enough for the jury. She also said that there were a lot of evidentiary issues and that the court, aka judge, stopped it from being presented to the jury because it will confuse them. Furthermore, she argued that the jury wasn't sequestered, meaning the jury wasn't isolated and they came home every night, had a 10-day break due to judicial conference of the judge, as well as the Memorial Weekend. Now, these are quite tough allegations from Elaine, and it did come across as a sour loser to me. There have been numerous evidences being leaked online, and I have to say, if those evidences came up in the court, the jury would immediately decide that Amber Heard was the abuser. Just saying. Bredehoft also said on TV that Depp already filed a defamatory suit in the UK, but they weren't able to say it in court that he has lost that case. And she thinks that if they were able to say that he lost, this could have swayed the jury's decision. Like, Really? Elaine, are we watching the same trial? But how come the UK trial and this trial had different outcomes? Let me break it down for you, Zesties. Firstly, the UK trial was about Depp suing the executive editor and publisher of the British tabloid The Sun for libel after it published an article which claimed that he assaulted Amber Heard and called him, quote unquote, a wife beater. Secondly, the UK trial was heard before a judge, whilst this trial was heard before a jury. It is actually much harder to win a defamation case in the US as plaintiffs face a much higher bar for providing evidence of libel of a public figure. In the US case, Depp has to prove that he was harmed with actual malice, but that didn't stop Depp from winning this case, stating that he just wants the truth out. The UK judge attached no weight to the idea that Heard was motivated by money and lied to get a divorce payout. He said he found her accounts believable despite a series of claims from Depp's team questioning her credibility. Now, a lot of mainstream media are saying that the reason why Depp won this case was because Depp's lawyers used the Darvo textbook defense tactic in sexual assault and domestic violence trials. This is deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender, which seems to not work against attorneys and judges but works well with the jury. So, say they use this tactic. However, irrespective of this tactic, when Amber Heard took the stand, she didn't come across as credible at all. Even if you take her testimony on by itself without seeing the Darvo tactic. Again, before you form your opinions about this trial, I urge you, Zesties, to make an informed decision or opinion by watching the full trial day by day like I did and see what I mean. This case was also filed in the state of Virginia, where the anti-SLAPP law is weak. SLAPP means for strategic lawsuits against public participation, and 32 states and the District of Columbia have laws against them, but no other state has one as quirky as Virginia, as some legal commentators say. The whole point of the law is to discourage the rich and powerful plaintiffs from abusing the court system to silence their critics. Unlike the other states, Virginia's anti-SLAPP law doesn't automatically stop the case from moving forward. If it were filed in LA, especially with a lot of celebrities, then it will be automatically dismissed. So when a person claims they are protected by an anti-SLAPP law in California, everything stops until a judge decides if they really are immune from litigation. In Virginia, the immunity provided by the state's anti-SLAPP law can be used as a defense at trial against the litigation. Thirdly, in the UK trial, Amber Heard said that she donated the $7 million divorce settlement in which the judge believed her. Just so fascinating how a judge can just take your word for it. However, in the US case, she actually said that she haven't donated all yet and uses the word pledge and donate synonymously, which is a very amusing play of words and have very staggering effects. While Amber Heard was promoting a film in a Dutch TV show around 2018, she actually said that she donated the entire amount and said, quote unquote, I wanted nothing after the divorce settlement. The Children's Hospital of Los Angeles received in total $350K of the $3.5 million pledge that Amber Heard publicly announced, while the ACLU have received $1.3 million of her $3.5 million pledge, and majority of which came from Heard's then boyfriend Elon Musk, who made the donations in her name. Fourthly, this case was televised, and because this case was televised, a lot of people who were present on the alleged incidents came forward through a notification by their friends in order to tell the truth. This was one of the most fascinating turnouts of this case. Two of the most interesting regular Joe witnesses came forward as rebuttal witnesses. Rebuttal witnesses can be surprise witnesses, and the other side doesn't need to be informed. You can imagine the horror on Amber Heard's camp on this, and they even tried to stop these two people from talking in the sand. One was Morgan Knight, the owner of the Hicksville Trailer Palace, where Amber Heard alleged Depp to perform a cavity search on her for a missing bag of cocaine. Morgan Knight's testimony went against Heard's version of events, stating that he was working that night and he saw what happened. This is a clip of that testimony.
Mr. Knight, you are a pretty big fan of Johnny Depp, aren't you?
I am not. To be honest,
For that, you wanted to participate in this trial, didn't you?
I did not. I was asked by the attorney, and I wanted to. They asked me, and I said I'll be happy to come and tell the truth.
Tweeted in response to the umbrella guy on April 21, 22, quote, "That never happened. I was with them all night. Amber was the one acting all jealous and crazy."
Another interesting rebuttal witness was Morgan Tremaine, a former TMZ employee who was in charge of the paparazzi deployed when Amber Heard filed for the TRO.
You know this case is being televised, right?
I am aware that there are cameras.
And so this gets you your 15 minutes of fame, doesn't
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
it? I can ask that question.
Oh, ruled.
So I stand to gain nothing from this. I'm actually putting myself kind of in a target of TMZ, a very litigious organization, and I'm not seeking any 15 minutes here. Though you're welcome to speculate. I could say the same thing by taking Amber Heard as a client for you.
A little argumentative, don't you think?
Oh, hardly. I find that to be purely logical.
What's interesting are these average Joes coming forward due to hearing from their friends that the companies that they used to work with was mentioned in the trial, and the fact that they were involved in the actual scene rebutted Amber Heard's testimony has all the more wiped out Amber Heard's credibility. The interesting thing is, if you've seen the whole trial and not the TikTok versions like I did, you can see in real time how Amber Heard's credibility really fell apart. On her testimony, she even blamed her lawyers and indicated that in a way, everyone was lying except her, even her own witnesses, expert and former friends alike, whose testimony didn't line up with her story. So this was very telling to the jury and ordinary people like me. If this wasn't televised, mainstream media, who is normally very biased, would report some weird articles which I actually read and have you thinking, are we watching the same trial? That's why it's better to see the trial with your own ears and eyes and form an opinion afterwards rather than seeing snippets of it in TikTok. So I'm going to share some interesting evidence and testimony that could have had an extreme impact in arriving at the verdict by the jury. There were mountains of evidence and exhibits presented in the trial to the point that feels redundant, but because this is a he said, she said trial, one evidence, testimony, or event have three different versions: her truth, his truth, and the truth. So I'm not going to provide you those mountains of evidence, that zesties, as it may take us weeks to finish this episode, but I'll share to you those that were the most memorable. A. There was an audio of Heard admitting to hitting Depp. This was what I mentioned in the previous episode, that I was hitting you, not punching you audio. But as the exchange escalated, Heard said,
I didn't punch you, by the way. I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
You know, you've been in a lot of fights. You've been around a long time. I know. Yeah.
No, when you fucking have a close
You
fist.
didn't get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you. I don't know what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this? I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are. That's the difference between me and you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you start.
You are such a baby. Grow the fuck up,
You
Johnny.
start physical fights.
I did start a physical
Yeah,
fight.
you did.
now that was spicy, isn't it? And B. Heard mocking Johnny, the infamous Tell the World Johnny audio.
You can please tell tell people that it was a fair fight and see what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them, Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and
Yes.
it's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
C. The numerous inconsistencies of Heard's alleged claims. Firstly, the Milani makeup color correcting palette that she allegedly used but was not even available the year she allegedly used it. Secondly, the mysterious case of Depp's severed finger in Australia. So she said in her deposition that actually Depp threw a bottle at her and then she told her acting coach about it, for which the acting coach testified to as well. But on the stand, she said that Depp was pounding her through a wall-mounted phone and smashed it into smithereens. Thirdly, the Hicksville Trailer Park incident where she said that Depp was very jealous and trashed the place. The owner of the park came forward and set the record straight that he was working that night and it was Amber who was acting crazy, and then they only had to charge $62 for the light fixtures that got broken, and those fixtures usually break. So that means Amber Heard wasn't telling the truth because she was telling Depp trashed the place, but it's actually a very minor light fixture that got broke, which also usually gets broken a lot of the times. Fourth, the staircase incidents for which she was speculating about the rumor that Johnny Depp pushed Kate Moss down the stairs, for which Kate Moss testified that it actually didn't happen. Fifth, that she didn't leak the smashing cabinet video to TMZ, where again, a former TMZ employee came forward and without naming Heard as the one who leaked the video, made it so apparent that she or her side was the one who sent the video. They even know what time they need to be there, which side of the court, as well as which side of her face to photograph. It's worth noting that TMZ has the copyright ownership of the smashing cabinet video. If you haven't seen it, it was a video of Depp smashing the cabinets, and the one who took the video was Amber Heard. In the TMZ video, it was edited wherein you cannot see Amber recording the video in the first take, but in the trial, the full video was shown that Amber Heard was actually the one who took the video. Morgan Tremaine said that it would take 15 minutes to obtain copyright if the material came from the source. And how many minutes were they able to obtain the copyright? About 15 minutes. D. That she misconstrued to the public that she already donated the full settlement, but in reality she didn't. She then said that because she was sued, that's why she couldn't pay the full amount to the charities. But we all know that she was sued only 13 months after the divorce settlement. So where was all the money? She had all the time in the world to donate them, and even she told in a Dutch TV show that she already donated. So Zesties, what do you think? Is pledge and donate mean the same to you? Let me know in your comments. E. Credibility of her expert witnesses. Again, this is a facepalm moment. One of her expert witnesses, Dr. Hughes, who's a forensic psychologist, didn't come off as credible, and she seemed to have taken Amber Heard's statements as facts instead of being a forensic expert witness. Depp's equivalent expert witness, Dr. Shannon Curry, came off as credible, likable, and very professional. She diagnosed Amber Heard of having histrionic and borderline personality disorder, which I might discuss in detail in the next few episodes. And the reason why Depp's side was able to diagnose Amber Heard of a mental illness was because Heard's defense was that she had PTSD. That's why the court allowed a diagnosis for her, or someone in Depp's side to diagnose her, whereas Heard's side couldn't diagnose Depp because Depp didn't claim that he has PTSD. Another expert, Dr. Spiegel, a Virginia-based psychiatrist, Heard's expert witness, again didn't come off as a likable and credible witness, and in one of his depositions even mentioned Depp as an idiot. There was also a question that he may have overstepped the bounds of the Goldwater rule, which is an area of ethics in psychology. Another expert from Heard's side, Catherine Arnold, an entertainment industry consultant who testified for the damages counterclaim of Amber Heard, compared Amber Heard to the likes of Jason Momoa, Gal Gadot, Ana de Armas, Chris Pine, and Zendaya. Even a non-expert like me can easily see through this argument that they are not comparable actors. She then referenced Heard's Aquaman casting as an example of her rise to stardom, that it was her quote-unquote star is born moment. Quite frankly, I haven't heard of Amber Heard before this trial, so obviously this was rebutted by Depp's expert witness, Richard Marks, not the singer, but the entertainment attorney who does entertainment deals in a regular basis. He even was also involved in the Star Wars deals with George Lucas and a whole lot more. What's more interesting is Depp's side had a witness, which is the Warner Brothers executive, Walter Hamada, who actually testified that Amber Heard's chemistry with the lead actor Jason Momoa wasn't real, and then that's why they had difficulty with her being casted on the second Aquaman movie. And that chemistry that you see in the movies is actually the magic of production and somewhat fabricated. So it's not actually Waldman's statements that were keeping her from being in Aquaman 2, but it's actually her chemistry with the lead actor. Then, who couldn't forget the hashtag expert Ron Schnell, who actually has a very impressive resume. He's the director of the Berkeley Research Group and a computer wizard, basically. But I feel like he was given the wrong assignment or instruction, so it pretty went downhill after he presented his hashtag analysis. It was Heard's team who actually introduced to the courtroom the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp, hashtag Amber Heard is an abuser, hashtag We Just Don't Like You Amber, and the ever so popular hashtag Amber Turd, referencing to the fecal matter that Amber Heard left on Depp's side of the bed. So now the jury knows what's happening outside the courtroom. And interestingly, he wasn't able to prove that those negative hashtags, which included the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp, were attributable to Adam Waldman's statements. And mind you, he had to take out the Justice for Johnny Depp hashtag on his chart because it was too much that it skewed the chart visually. I mean, yeah. So there were numerous expert witnesses on Heard's side that didn't come off as credible and likable, whose testimony were either not contributing or damaging to her narrative, whilst Depp's expert witnesses came off as credible and likable, the likes of Dr. Shannon Curry, Richard Marks, and also the marketing expert as well.
One eternity later.
So, zesties, those were just few of the things that could have contributed to how the jury arrived at their verdict. A lot of people said that this is going to be harder for victims of DV and IPV to come forward, and this is sending a wrong message to the public. Again, as I've shared earlier, I don't think it will. This case is not Johnny Depp against IPV and DV victims at all. It's between two individuals. Each individual is different, and each case is different. This case is extremely unique, and it's not good to generalize something out of one thing, right? So if anything, this sends a message that one shouldn't fabricate lies about anybody, and whether they have mutually abused one another. I'm not sure if you can call yourself a victim if you are an abuser at the same time. And if you're a victim of abuse, this will help you gather what compelling evidence you can provide for your case. So I hope, Zesties, that this has shed light about the case. And I have watched the case thoroughly and all throughout, and not through social media snippets. So please don't forget to share this episode to your friends, rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform, or reach out to any of our socials. Truth prevails. I'll see you next time.